Okay, our first lesson in our next percent unit, everything that we're dealing with this unit has to deal with percent. Whether it's sales, whether it's commission-based, whether it is part to whole, is to of, all of that stuff, we have to know how to handle percents and fractions and convert it. So we're going to convert rationals today. You can convert between the three forms of rational numbers: fraction, decimal, percent. Those are all the three forms of rational numbers. Converting just means to change. To change. I'm going to convert. I'm going to change my form. All right. And this I do want you to just memorize the process, because you don't get resources when you take any kind of standardized test. Fraction to decimal we've been doing pretty much this whole year. How do you turn a fraction to a decimal?
Divide the numerator by the denominator.
Yes, very fancy. Numerator divided by denominator. I'm more simplistic and I say top divided by bottom. So you go numerator divided by denominator, or top divided by bottom. How do you turn a percent to a decimal? Keegan? Maybe not. Maybe this is, you need to review. Paige?
Put the decimal in front of the two numbers from the
Yes, move the decimal 2 spots to the left. So move decimal 2 spots to the left. For example, 67% is 0.67, right? 5% is 0.05. You need a placeholder 0. You're definitely going to need to remember placeholder zeros today, because 0.5 is not the same as 0.05. How do you turn a percent to a fraction? Hence,
Put the percent over the place value.
which is every percent is, what's a perfect percent? 100. Every percent is over 100. So the number over 100, the percent number over 100. Fraction to percent. Carter?
You divide the numerator divided by denominator and move the decimal 2 spots to it.
Yep, so I'm going to go top divided by bottom, and then move 2 spots to the right. Decimal to fraction. How do you turn a decimal to a fraction, Keegan?
You take the decimal number and put it over 100.
No, that's percent.
My bad.
Place value, right? It's the number over the place value. So like 0.3 is, the number is 3, the place value is 10. A decimal to a percent, we already did that. To move 2 spots to the right.
Percent to fraction.
Okay. So you need to be, even if you feel like you are a master at this, we need to get it fresh on our minds, because it's been, about a year probably or longer since you've been actually converting between all 3 forms, so we can start solving with proportions and stuff. So here's the logical sequence. You always start with a fraction, turn it to a decimal, then turn it to a percent. That's how I do everybody's grade. Let's say you got 27 out of 30 on a test. I start with a fraction, 27 divided by 30, which I think is 0.9. 27 divided by 30, which turns to 0.9, which turns to 90%. It's always how you start it. Fraction, decimal, percent. Okay? All right. So let's just fill in the blank. 2/3 as a decimal. Hey, I know this is a 7th grade learning standard. When you go 2 divided by 3 is 0.66666. All those 6's, then it ends in a 7. That's where you're supposed to be able to identify that calculators truncate numbers. So this is really 0.6 repeating. And as a percent, what do we want to do? Round it? Round it to the nearest whole percent would be 67%. I don't know what you want to do.
I do
66.7%, I mean, equivalent
I do 66.6.
percent, yeah.
Yeah, I see it with the line over it, but it's a decimal percent. So it's like if it's 66.666, they write it 66.66 with the line over it.
As a percent. Okay, when you're given a decimal, it doesn't matter how you do it. Now I want to turn my decimal to a fraction. I want to turn my decimal to a percent. Well, to turn my decimal to a percent, I just move it 2 spots to the left, right, is 13%. 2 spots to the right. And a fraction is the number over place value. My number is 13, my place value is 100. Turning 14% to the other 2 forms of rationals, I usually do it over 100 first, 14 over 100. Because I know a percent is always over 100, that's always the whole. Percent whole is always over 100. And then simplify, which is what, 7 over 50? And my decimal is 0.14, moving it 2 spots to the left. Okay, my fraction, I can just go 5 divided by 7 is 0.71 rounded. Remember that was rounded, which turns to 71%. Okay, turning 0.14 into the other 2 forms, well, I know 0.14 is 14 over 100, which is 7 over 50. And I also know that's 14%. So those are my other 2 forms. 2/5. Did I do all of these on the table? Are all of those on the table?
No.
That we just did, or only some of them? Only some of them, that's right. Okay, so 2/5 is 0.4. 0.4 is 40%. So I have all 3 forms. That's my goal, is to have all 3 forms. 96% is 96 over the whole, which is 100. And I have no idea what half of 96 is, but I am going to 48 over 50, which is what, 24 over 25. Okay, finally got there. And then turn it to a decimal would just be 0.96. I feel like I should be slightly more organized. So I should maybe say fraction percent. You don't have to. I just feel mine looks really unorganized. Like, what am I even doing here? So 0.95 as a fraction is 95 over 100. 5 goes into both of them. 5 goes into 95 19 times over 20. And my percent would be 95%. 7 is given to me as a decimal because it's 7.0. So I need to turn it to a fraction and I need to turn it to a percent. So fraction and my percent. Fraction, 7 over 1. Well, if this is 7.0, then my percent is a ginormous 700%. Because you have to move it 2 spots. It's not 7%, it's not 70%, it's 700%. I bet you this is a lot bigger percent. Okay, it's given to me as a decimal. The decimal just hides. So my fraction is 45 over 1. And my percent is 4,500%. given to me as a fraction, so I need to have my decimal and I need to have my percent. I remember that anything over 9 is a repeating decimal, and there's one number repeating because it's 1 9, and the 3 is what repeats. So the decimal is 0.33, repeating for infinity. I'm just stopping it because I just need to go to percent, which is 33%. Maybe I'll put the other 3 there just because that tells you if it rounds up or down, you know, when I go to the nearest whole. I'm given a percent, so I need my fraction and I need my decimal. Fraction is 22 over 100, which is 11 over 50, and decimal 0.22. All right, so you need to add this next heading down here. This is the application. So being able to convert, that's just procedure. Now you need to know how to apply converting, and you apply it when you compare and order rational numbers. So when you compare them, you want to turn them all to the same form. I like to turn them all to a decimal. It works easier for me. Some of you might want to turn it to a percent, whatever you want to personally do. I like to turn it to a decimal. Okay? And I'll show you both ways. Maybe this first one might have been easier to convert them both to a percent. Either way, they need to be the same form. Whether you do it both of them fractions, both of them percents, both of them decimals. They have to be the same before you compare them. 5% is what to 0.1? Well, I can turn this to 0.05 is what to 0.1? You go by place value, it's smaller. Or you could say 5% is what to 0.1? You could turn your 0.1 to a percent. What percent is 0.1? 10. 5% is what to 10%? Smaller. So I don't know, maybe some of you are like, oh yeah, percent was definitely easier. It's whatever you like to do best. 2/5 I know is 0.4 is what to 17.6%, which is 0.176. Compare by the place value, then that is bigger. Or 2/5 is 0.4, which is 40%, is what to 17.6%? 40% is bigger. Point being, I don't care what you convert them to, as long as you convert them to the same form. You'll get the same answer. So what's easier for some kids might not be easier for the other. And that's your learning target today.